Gentlemen, I do want to step in here.
Yeah.
It's very hard for me to break up really great conversation, but for the sake of time, we do want to move on to the next question. And I think many of these topics will actually be within some of the future questions. So we definitely come full circle to them. But Ryan, you are up next on the debate floor. This is a little antithesis here. I feel it's very safe to say that you are maybe pro Facebook's the wrong word, but you definitely have an amicable relationship with them. Many of the detractors of Facebook and Oculus, they do express a lot of concerns about their privacy. Now, Facebook's not perfect. Most companies aren't. A lot of had issues with some more recent than others. But to you, is there an actual threat to you, to I, and to the VR community here? Is there really a huge nefarious use of our data going on, in your opinion, as bad as Facebook detractors like to claim? Or is it currently the low-hanging fruit scare tactics?
Yeah, that's a great question. I obviously don't know what Facebook is doing with the data under the hood, so I can't speak to that. But I can speak to what I've seen as a developer, and frankly, what some of the concerns that I see around why you are and why Facebook may not have allowed that on the platform. I assume both of you guys are familiar with Cambridge Analytica, which was the big kind of data breach. I think a lot of people have heard of it, but they don't really know exactly what happened. What happened with Cambridge Analytica is there was this third-party app that was running on Facebook that was a survey app called This Is Your Digital Life. And it paid 270,000 people to access it and fill out this survey. And in order to fill out the survey, you had to give them permission, give them Facebook permission. So 270,000 people gave this app Facebook permission. The app then downloaded all of their user data, which was a violation of Facebook's policy, but they did it anyway. And then they sold that data to Cambridge Analytica. Cambridge Analytica then used that data to do some very malicious things, right? So I think when you understand that, one, Facebook didn't sell anybody's data in that whole breach, and the company that did sell the data violated Facebook's terms to do it. I think it's kind of eye-opening, and it explains why, Facebook wouldn't allow an app like YUR to function on the store, because YUR is able to access controller information and headset information across apps and access which apps you're using. Which they could then grab all that data, store all of that data, and potentially sell it to advertisers or sell it to a company like Cambridge Analytica. Not to say that they would do this. I'm just saying that it's possible for them to ascertain this information and then sell it, and that would come back on Facebook. So I think it's actually really, smart that Facebook is being more cautious when it comes to apps that run as utilities at a systems level. And I will say that, as a developer of every platform that I've developed for, which is, Android, iOS, Chrome extension, which is probably the most access you could ever imagine, Facebook and Oculus is kind of the most locked down. The only information we get about users is their username and the name of their friends that have our app, not friends across the board, just the ones that have our app. We don't get demographic information, location information, anything like that. So as a developer, it would be great if we got access to more information, because it would allow us to basically do better targeting and make more sales or optimize our features in a better way. But they've decided not to do that. So, I commend them for that. I think that what I've seen of the Oculus platform so far is it's very privacy centric, and they don't give access to the pass-through cameras. If we had that, I think there's some cool features that we could build, but we don't have it yet. So from what I've seen, just at a pure technical level, I think they're doing a good job.
So I'm going to open up the floor to the debates, and Six, you are up. I am going to hold this topic at a hard 6 minutes from now.
Okay. All right. So let's address this whole notion that Facebook is somehow concerned about data privacy. In fact, I'm going to even quote Boz here. We are going to start with the assumption that we can't collect, use, or store any data. And he said that he's going to do that starting in January. Let me make sure this can actually be visible. So for anybody who has the Oculus application on their iPhone, I want you to go through this process. Open up your iPhone, click on the data linked to you after you search for the Oculus app. And let me show you how privacy conscious they are with Oculus. So this is the privacy and data that the Oculus app is taking from you. How many pages is that? Is that really privacy conscious? Do we really believe Facebook? I'm still going. I'm still going. This is all the data that Facebook Reality Labs is tracking on you. How long is this? I don't even want to go through this whole thing.
Are there any specific bits of information there that have you concerned, or what? I mean, a long list of words. What's the takeaway?
My concern goes back to the very thing I spoke about in the very beginning, which is honesty. We have a corporation who has more users than any country in the world. And not only are they using that data, they are using that data dishonestly. And they are also being dishonest about the amount of data that's being collected. Going back to this, Boz himself said this, and then the actual reality is that they are tracking as much data as the Facebook application. And going back to all your concerns about why you are, what you're saying is that it's okay for Facebook to do it, but it's not okay for third parties to do it. When in addition to that, we made sure to be CCPA compliant, COPA compliant, every single form of compliancy, because we were going through the process of getting into the store and had to provide them significant amount of white papers on our privacy method, on our performance method, on how we manage that data for the exact concerns that you mentioned. And the Cambridge Analytica one is incredibly ironic because what you're describing is basically that Facebook themselves is incapable of keeping this data private. Wasn't it just announced that they leaked 500 million users' data and information, but they never told us that leaked? And you are sitting here and telling me that YUR, a fitness application that obscured the majority of the data, the only thing that we knew was the height, weight, and sex of the end user in order to inform them of the calories they burned. Everything else was entirely anonymized, and we were literally going through a privacy audit. Is somehow nefarious when Facebook has a blatant history of being nefarious with their data.
No, my
Ryan, I'm
point
going to give you 2
is
minutes
that,
here for a response before we move on.
Thanks.
To the next.
Yeah, I appreciate it. My point is that YUR could store how much time people are playing the games, all of the controller movement and head movement within those games, which we know can be used to identify people just based on movement. And they could be storing all of this information and then sell it to another company that uses it in a nefarious way, right? That's exactly what happened with Cambridge Analytica. And that's why I think Facebook is cracking down and not allowing that kind of access, right? To your point, like, look, it's Facebook's platform, so they're gonna have this data no matter what, but it is safer if Facebook doesn't distribute that data to third parties. I think it's hard to argue with that.
So to respond to that very quickly, in the Unity engine with your game right now, you could be tracking all that data and Facebook wouldn't know. You have control of that in the game engine, and that's how our SDK works. That's how your game works. Your game works by understanding where your head and your hands are and submitting that to the application.
It's different if they're running my application versus across the system.
You could take that data and send it back to your own data stores. In addition to this, the additional data that we requested, FitXR asks for that exact same data. They ask for email, they ask for height, weight, and sex. They ask for literally the exact same data that YUR as application used.
But the difference is people are running a different application and you guys are tracking that information behind the scenes. It's very different when your application is front and center versus when your application is running behind the scenes and someone may forget that they're tracking it. So
I'm
you
going to
can
jump
track
in here, guys,
usage across
when
multiple
Uber
apps.
uses your app, when Uber uses your app, they track your location 24/7. Don't you think that could be used nefariously?
We're going to move
And
on to the next
Apple loves
question,
that
guys, or else I'll have to mute the mics here for our time.